Thank you for joining us today for the Conform to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. I'm Jay Jones, and I'm here with George Mays. George, you know what? We kind of have some long podcasts,
Yeah.
but they're kind of becoming in style. So
Yeah.
we might need to,
We're actually on the short side.
an hour and a half.
Yeah.
We've done an hour and a half several times,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe we need to put in there. We're a long form podcast.
I had some people yesterday telling me that if we went longer, that they would listen. They wouldn't
Yeah.
mind. So
Okay. Who knows?
so there you go.
Yeah. But it's every week, too.
Yeah.
Does Joe Rogan do every week?
I think he does.
Yeah. I don't know. He's got a lot of episodes.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those 3-hour episodes with Trump and Vance were pretty good.
Maybe next time there's a local election, we need to try to have him in here.
That'd be pretty wild.
It would be so wild. the people that were running for mayor.
Did you ever watch
Bro.
Did you ever watch that debate?
I
sent
I
you
just
with
watched the
them?
beginning so I
Okay.
could see them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were some characters.
Yeah.
I don't live in the city, George, so I can't run for mayor. But we could run you for mayor.
Please don't. Why do you hate me?
Plus, it's like plus 10 points in the polls for Beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you are white, so that's like -5.
Only -5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to change that Cubs hat out for whatever that AAA is up there. What is it now? They change it all the time. Used to be Dodgers AAA.
Where up in
Bricktown?
Up in Bricktown, I think it's still the Dodgers.
Okay. It used to be Royals, then it went Dodgers.
It was the Rangers farm team for a while,
Oh. Man.
and they became the Dodgers
Yeah.
farm team. I don't know. Well, Trump won.
Oh, yeah.
It's the
I
first.
forget.
This is the first time we've. This is the
Yeah.
first time we've recorded since
Yeah,
since the election.
it is. Yeah.
Everyone, all the leftists are having meltdowns.
They're mentally unwell.
I have been really disappointed just in friends on Facebook that are professing Christians that are also having maybe not meltdowns like you're seeing on TikTok with people like setting up their phone very carefully and then screaming.
And crying.
Yeah. But just the like disappointment and shame for what America has done, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like people don't get or listen to the other side. The freedom of speech issue is a big issue, man. Like
I think that's the problem. I think that they buy into the rhetoric that they're hearing from the left,
yeah.
but they're not actually talking to. They're buying into this idea that it's just a bunch of right wing crazy people who are voting for Trump,
Mm-hmm.
and they're buying into like this idea that Trump is like Hitler,
Mm-hmm.
like he's the second coming of Hitler. Like what exactly are you comparing? Like what with Trump would line up with Hitler? Because it's the left that
Yeah.
has been censoring things.
Yeah.
Like
For
they
sure.
control everything. They control all the media.
Yeah. Well, used to.
They control they control the narrative.
Yeah. Well, that's
I-
why they don't want Twitter to be a free place.
Mhm.
That's why they're saying we've got to crack down on social media and misinformation. But misinformation is always the information that's counter to your information.
Right.
That's how they
yeah,
label it.
who gets to decide
Yeah.
what's misinformation
Hate speech.
and hate speech.
Yeah. We were one election away from like the gospel being hate speech in this country.
Yeah.
For real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand it,
Yeah.
but it's just disappointing to see people buy into the rhetoric.
It's
we're
called
not-
propaganda, George.
Yeah,
That's
we're
what
not
it's called,
we're not saying
propaganda.
that we're not saying that Trump is a Christian, but out of the two pagans that we were going to vote for, I'd say he's the better pagan.
Yeah, one wants to protect free speech for all people, not just for people on the right.
Right.
That seems kind of like not a very good fascist. If you want to protect all people's speech,
Right.
but I guess somehow that in their mind that works out as fascism to give everybody speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. Decentralizing government. I don't know if you know this, George. That's another big fascist mark.
Yes, that's true.
Huge. Huge fascist.
Sending all the authority back to the states.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to take over.
But they just reinvent words.
Yeah.
Craft a narrative.
Mm.
Yeah.
He's the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need. I'd like to talk about this. We talked about it a little bit before we started, but I'd like to talk about it. Steve Lawson.
Oh yeah.
Because the big bombshell that went off Thursday or Friday, is that he preached regularly at the church down in Texas, but he wasn't an elder, and come find out he wasn't even a member of the church.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't actually very surprised when I found that out, because I had speculated to you privately that I don't think that the church really has membership, has like a membership process. So like, how would you do church discipline?
Right.
If you have no church membership, where's your where's accountability for anybody?
Yeah.
And I really think it was just a church that was planted, birthed out of the popularity of that Bible study he did in the coffee shop.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably some influential men. This is my theory. Some influential men, probably who had a little bit of money, some finances. We're like, we could start our own church, and Steve Lawson could be our main preacher, and that'd be a big draw. Which, of course, it would be a big draw, right? Because he, no matter what you want to say about him, he was a good expositor, and could preach. And so I think that's how the church started. And I mean, people would travel. Like if they're on vacation, they're going to Dallas. They'd be like, I went to Steve Lawson's church.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how it went. There are churches like that, though, that are, and it's just not his. There are churches that you're kind of just part of the church if you're a regular attender and you come to our activities. But so the whole ecclesiology, to me, seems to be just completely unbiblical and unhealthy to begin with.
Yeah.
But then, we find out he was just like the main preacher.
He was the lead preacher on their website.
Yeah.
That's what they had it.
Lead preacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands out. I mean, it was always there, but it really stands out when you are looking at it after the fact. Like you've got elder, lead preacher. That's weird. That's weird. Why is he labeled that instead of an elder?
In a way, I mean, I'm not saying I feel bad for him and excuse his behavior, because I don't, but I feel bad for him because I don't think he ever experienced what we get to experience.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever has. So I think he had 2 really bad church experiences in his history, and I don't think he trusts congregants anymore, or possibly even other like leaders on staff. I think he maybe was a little bit jaded with church. I mean, it put you through the ringer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you went through it. And I just...
It took a while for me to start really opening up to people and trusting them after the church tried to get rid of me, because when you're coming in and you're always suspicious, you're hearing rumors that people are meeting and talking about you behind your back, and they're telling these lies, and there's other people outside the church that know what's going on, and people are coming in and they're lying to your face and screaming at you and all kinds of things. Yeah, it took a while for me to get over it, but that's where you let the Bible govern your actions and not your feelings.
Yeah.
Because the Bible calls for us to be in a local church. And even though it doesn't have like the structured membership like we would have.
It's
like
not spelled out.
You're filling out like we fill out, to join our church, you go through a membership process. That's not spelled out in the New Testament, but they obviously are members of the church.
All right.
Whatever that that look like in the first century. They obviously were members of the church, and the pastors were assumed to be members of the church.
Right.
Yeah, you let the Bible govern what you're doing, and that can be hard. Like it's not easy to push those feelings away, but you do have to believe that the scriptures that the New Testament authors were inspired by the Spirit, and that God knows better than you do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we've got Steve Lawson, who wasn't a member, and he falls into sin. And what did they do? Like, you can't do anything. He wasn't a member, so what do you do?
Yeah.
You can't excommunicate him because he wasn't a communicant. he wasn't a member in the first place.
Yeah. I still think they could make a formal statement,
Yeah.
public statement, condemning him and saying, like, look, he's not responsive to us at all. We've reached out. We're trying to call him to repentance, but I mean, they could do a little more, I think.
Yeah, it's just radio silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this just reminds us of the importance of good ecclesiology.
Right.
Like, it's not like a third tier issue. Like, this is important.
Well, even John MacArthur had church accountability. People probably don't think he does, but I mean, he does. There's a board of elders there.
Yeah.
And he talks about the Dark Wednesday. I think they call it Dark Wednesday, where I think he was maybe like 7 or 8 years into his ministry. He comes in, and the elder board's having a meeting because there's like 5 elders that want to fire him.
Oh, really?
Because they don't think the church will really grow under his preaching. Funny, huh?
Yeah.
But apparently, this is how it went. He goes in the meeting, and they're talking about it, and they're like, "What do you have to say?" He's like, "Nothing. I got a sermon to prepare for tonight. Whatever you guys decide, I'll go with." And he left. That's how it went.
Yeah.
And so if they would have decided to fire him, he would have been fired.
Mm.
But they didn't.
Yeah.
The 5 lost out. And so, yeah, there was obviously nothing
even
like that.
Even that, you hear about it, and I would say that's not good ecclesiology either, because I think that the members are they're the ultimate governing authority. Like, you can't have like,
well, that's because
a board of elders that fire.
Well, we're congregational,
right?
And they're not. They have elder rule,
right?
So they're operating more like a Presbyterian church,
right?
Yeah. We're
better Baptist.
Yeah, we go with the congregational route,
right? But this, I've even been thinking about this in terms of podcast. Like, you've got guys that have podcasts that are wildly popular, but they're not really connected to churches. And it's like, who are you?
Right.
Like, why should I listen to you?
Right.
Like, you're not a pastor. I don't even know the name of your church or who your pastor is.
Right.
Like, you're on here, and I'm saying this as someone that has a podcast, but everyone knows that we're pastors at this church.
Right.
Like, who are you? Like, do you have any kind of reason why I should listen to you other than you record yourself saying edgy things that get you embroiled in controversy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure.
Be careful who you listen to. Just because someone has a podcast doesn't mean that they deserve your time. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, the church is just kind of in a unhealthy state. And it's not just like the leaders. Congregants too. Like, congregants, I think, can be fascinated with and kind of look up to other people that aren't their pastors.
Yeah.
Like,
I won't drop any names. It's a popular Twitter personality. And he posted something a couple of days ago about something he did at his church. And I just was scrolling through the comments because I don't take my own advice and ignore the comment section. And one of the comments that stuck out to me was, "I wish my pastor had this kind of guts."
Hopefully he's not on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe that's not something
hopefully your pastor's not on Twitter and didn't read it.
Like that, because if your pastor read it, like, that's discouraging.
Yeah.
Like why are you like going with this stranger? Like you don't know this person on Twitter and he doesn't know you. He's not your pastor. Your pastor is providentially, God has given you your pastor in your local church who cares for you, and he's been assigned this role to shepherd you. And if you have a problem with how he's shepherding, you could talk to him.
Yeah.
Like, why are you commenting on Twitter under some random personality
Yeah.
saying, well, I wish my pastor was more like you. Like that's not good. That's an attitude that is going to be carried into the church on Sundays.
For sure.
Like you're going to come to church. Well, I wish this other personality was my pastor. I wish I could be where that guy was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just kind of gross.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, move out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You live in America.
Stop comparing your pastor to these personalities.
Yeah.
Like the grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll go to another church and think, I finally arrived. Well, Spurgeon has something to say to that. Like if you ever find the perfect church, don't join it.
Yeah, I mean,
because you'll mess it up.
I've seen it. The former church, I've been at other churches before, and one of them, our preacher was phenomenal. He's still one of the best, I think, preachers that nobody's ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd see our church members like be unkind to him or his wife.
Yeah.
And then like love like these online personalities. And I'm like, bro, they can't even preach as good as your flesh and blood pastor who's right here in real life. You can go talk to him and have lunch with him.
Yeah.
And you're infatuated with this person across the country who's not as good a preacher as he is. He's just popular and influential.
Yeah, even if they even if they were a better preacher, I mean that's objective, or subjective. It's based on what you think.
But what I think is right,
but
George.
that person doesn't know you and doesn't love you.
George, you just missed it.
What?
I said, but what I think is right.
Yeah, that's right.
Not really subjective. It's a fact.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's yeah, you've got men at your local church who hopefully, if they're good pastors, they love you, they know you. They're doing more than just preaching. Like that's the problem with Steve Lawson, right? Like he'd show up and he'd preach, but he wasn't a member, and they don't have membership anyway, and he's traveling all the time, so he's not able to like pour himself into this congregation.
He's not thinking about you.
Yeah, so he's not thinking about what you're going through when he's preparing these sermons. He's just preaching. I mean, they'd basically be conference sermons.
He's not praying for you by name,
right?
Yeah, we pray for our church people.
Yeah, the pastor's job is more than just preaching.
Yeah,
it's not less than the preaching, but it's more. It's more than the preaching. And these personalities online. Maybe you like their teaching, but they don't know you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe we'll balance out. Maybe it'll balance out. Maybe this will wake some people up.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should. I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing going on right now about who's responsible for this. Like, there's a bunch of people who are responsible for the Steve Lawson situation. This is not this isn't one person. Like the elders at this church, they bear the brunt of it. But there's other people. Like he spoke at a lot of places.
A lot of hero worship too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And assumptions. A lot of assumptions.
You remember, and this is a weird phenomenon because you're online. You have a podcast. People can listen to you. Like I remember, it's probably like the third conference we had before we canceled. There was a person. I was in the hall right over here, and they walked by. They were like, "You're Jay Jones." I was like, "Yeah." The
Jay.
Then they said, "The Jay Jones."
One and only.
I was like, "Yeah, I'm about to go in here and use the bathroom." Like a normal human being, and I'm a pastor of a church with, at that time, less than 100 people.
Right,
less than 100 people in our church.
Yeah.
Like,
Superstar J. Jones.
yeah, this is weird
Yeah.
because you can get us on.
Would you autograph my Bible?
Because you can listen to us on because you can get us on iTunes. Like, we're not celebrities.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Weird.
Got like a couple of dozen
But
people
weird,
that listen
right?
to us.
Now you take that like if that will happen in our little
Right.
sphere
Mm-hmm.
of Reformed world in Oklahoma,
Right.
amplify it times a million for like a big person.
Right.
It's legit. There's an unhealthy
Uh-huh.
like celebrity type idolatry
Right.
in the Christian church that just needs to go away
Mm-hmm.
forever.
Yeah. I don't know where these conferences came from. Like I like going to a good conference. I just wonder where
George.
where did that come from? Where did that arise?
I don't know. First one I ever went to was Shepherd's Conference, and that one's kind of aimed toward pastors.
Uh-huh.
So that was a pretty good one. I mean, now I'm kind of
Every time I
I'm kind of
turn
skeptical
around,
now.
there's another conference.
Is that bad? Like, I'm kind of skeptical now. I'm like, why should I listen to you? I don't even know you.
Right.
I don't even know if you're a pastor at a church.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it now, right?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yep.
So, I don't know. It's hard not to be skeptical like that now. You know?
It's just a good time to tell everyone, if you're a member of our church watching, Jay and I are pastors at this church, and we are members.
Yeah.
We are members.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on the roll.
Yeah, and we have some accountability. You know, we don't, so we have elder meetings, and sometimes people will be like, hey, what about this? And then the other ones will be like, nah.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh. So there's accountability.
Fine, I quit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know, George.
Strange
Pretty
days we live in.
disappointed though. Pretty disappointed in the whole Steve Lawson thing.
Yeah.
You know? Even Drake, like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
he's not on Twitter that much, but he's like, hey, did you see this after it came out? I was like, did you see this? And he's like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
So he says, this is so weird. Yeah, it is. That's a good way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Super weird. Yeah. Well, 22 minutes in, we haven't even talked about Text Driven Tuesday. It's Text Driven Tuesday, in case you didn't know that. And we're back in Genesis. And today we're looking at the crown jewel of creation.
Mm-hmm.
The crown jewels, George.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if I got to see those when I was little, because my dad was stationed in Germany.
Yeah.
And I do remember driving in England. We had a Mitsubishi minivan, and it was the best minivan because had bucket seats in the back,
Okay.
and they would turn around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, it was legit. And I'm pretty sure my sister made me throw up in England because I was feeling sick, and she was like, look at that cow pooping. And it was like, I looked over, it's like shooting poop, and I barfed all in the van. That's what I remember about my trip to England.
This is the quality content that people
Yeah, they're just getting
can
to know
get
me,
from
you know?
us that they
This
can't
is-
get from some of
Well,
these
you know,
other,
I'm a
these other
pastor, and
personalities.
I want the church people. I want them to know me. You know what I mean? I'm a person,
Yeah.
and they get to know me a little better on the
Yeah.
podcast. And I wish I could remember more because I'm pretty sure we went to see that stuff.
Yeah, in the Tower
And I
of
have
London.
like a flash of like kind of entering a secure area,
Mhm.
but I cannot remember seeing them.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure we went, and I wish I could remember it.
Okay.
But that's how you started your sermon, talking about the crown jewels.
Uh-huh.
The immense, like they are worth a lot of money.
Yeah, like what, $4 to $6 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah. The largest cut diamond and the second largest cut diamond are both in the crown jewels.
They only wear it at their coronation, or what?
Yeah, there's a lot of it has to do with the coronation.
Okay.
There's a crown that St. Edward's crown is what they're coronated in. They've got a royal scepter. There's a sword, and there's even a spoon. There's even a spoon that goes, like, they've got something that holds the oil that they anoint the holy oil that they anoint the monarch with. They've got like a spoon that it's part of the crown jewels. Yeah, there's 140 different objects.
Wow.
They're mainly used for the coronation or like state functions.
Okay. I'd like to see them sporting that sword.
Yeah.
Like when
I
they
don't
ever
know if
when they ever wear it.
I don't know if King Charles wore it at his coronation or not.
Hmm.
I'm not sure.
Well, you use that to bridge into the crown jewel of all creation.
Mm.
The crown jewel of all creation, George.
Right.
And it's man.
Yep.
Mankind.
Yeah.
That's how the
It's us.
text is flows and
Uh-huh.
points us to this. The capstone,
Mhm.
the final masterpiece.
Right.
The masterpiece of God's creation. Man.
Yep.
And so there, you said, as we look at this text, there are really like three of the biggest questions that you could ever ask. And what's interesting is how many people aren't asking these questions.
Mhm.
Maybe that's one of the big problems in our society, is that the whole thing is like functioning in a way to where people don't reflect and they don't ask these big questions anymore.
I think one of the problems why people don't ask these questions, I think we don't have enough silence in our society.
Mhm.
Like, you're always surrounded by noise. You put on headphones and you listen to music, or you're watching TV or a podcast or whatever. You just never have time to sit and reflect.
Mhm.
People aren't bored anymore. Like, people need to be bored so that they'll start thinking about these things.
It's like it's amazing. If you do sit in silence, it will like unlock your brain.
Yeah.
It really will. I learned that as I'm preparing like to preach.
Mm-hmm.
If I like will stop and just like sit in my chair and just have silence and think, then I start getting all kinds of connections
Uh-huh.
and ideas and illustrations. It's
Yeah.
like your brain just starts firing.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's just stimulated all the time, it's like we just handicap. We just
Mhm.
handicap ourselves.
Stick in the earbuds and you can just listen to
Classical
stuff
music.
all the time.
Oh, I thought you meant when you're
Classical music.
when you're trying to-
No.
Classical music will help you
Mm-hmm.
get your juices flowing in your brain.
Yeah, but people they don't sit in silence, so they're not asking these questions.
Yeah. So there are three big questions and three big answers to these questions we're going to have as we look at this text. And really, we're zeroing in on the portion of Genesis chapter 1, starting in verse 20. I need to put on my glasses. 26,
Yeah.
verse 26. Man, I need to either get a larger print Bible or have my glasses handy more.
Yeah.
But starting in verse 26, then God said, let us make man. So that's where we're at, if you want to grab your Bible and zero in there. And the first big question that this text answers is, where did I come from?
Mm-hmm.
And the two competing worldviews in our society, they could not be more opposed to each other
Right.
today. And they have massive ramifications for everything,
Mm-hmm.
ethics, politics, like everything. So where did I come from?
Yeah. I mean, the prevailing view that is hammered into kids through public school, books, movies. I mean, you got this in Avengers: Infinity War.
Yeah.
Like when they're talking about the Infinity Stones,
Mhm.
there was nothing, and then there was the Big Bang, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just ingrained so much in our culture that everyone just takes it as fact
Mhm.
that billions upon billions upon billions of years ago there was nothing, and then something happened. I was looking it up. Like, what do scientists think actually happened?
Mhm.
And the answer that kept popping up is nobody really knows.
They don't.
No one
Yeah.
knows. There was nothing, and then there was something, but they don't know how that happened. And the reason why they don't know why that happened is because it's logically absurd.
Right.
You can't have nothing, and then all of a sudden there's something. Where did this come from? But billions of years, the solar system is formed, the sun, however this stuff starts, like however matter even comes into existence, it forms a ball in just the right place in the solar system, just the right distance from the sun, at just the right angle, so that life can exist.
All right.
And then billions more years and life emerges. Where that comes from, nobody knows. And then the life evolves and becomes more and more complex, and there's something that comes out of the sea, and it just hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, and now here we are, doing a podcast. That's the origin story that probably the vast majority of people in the West hold to.
Right.
And if that's the case, then we are just cosmic accidents.
Yeah, we're an
Like
accident.
we're just another step in the evolutionary process. We're just animals,
Yeah.
right? And that's what people believe. They believe they're animals.
The luckiest animals.
The luckiest animals, yeah, the smartest animals. And so people start living like animals, and that's how we think about sex, violence. We're just animals,
Yeah. Apes.
highly evolved animals, but just animals nonetheless.
Naked
Now,
apes.
now, if you can get someone like Carl Sagan, who said that we're all made up of star stuff,
Mm.
and we can get atheists that are waxing eloquent that, oh, look how majestic it is, you're star stuff. But once you die, and you're gone, and there's nothing, like, who cares? Like, what's that?
Yeah.
What's so majestic about star stuff? It's just a cosmic accident too.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
And your star stuff, what does that have to do with who am I?
Yeah.
Where did I come from? Why am I here? Like, there's no purpose to star stuff.
I read an article last week about I think chimpanzees that they had taught sign language. Like, they've been able to communicate. They can teach apes many different words, so they can grow their vocabulary. And the article said, in the 25 years we've been communicating with apes, they have never asked a single question.
I saw that article.
They've never asked a question.
Yeah.
Like, where's my food? Like,
Mm.
my dog asked me that. She'll come over and like nudge me with her big face,
Yeah.
and I know what she's asking for.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you'd think if you give them a vocabulary like food and stuff, they could be like, "Where's my food?"
Right.
At least they don't even ask, not a single question.
That's wild.
But we ask.
The,
Or should ask
the apes are not
big
asking.
questions.
The apes are not asking, where did I come from?
Right.
Like, they're not asking those questions. That should give us pause. Like, why are we out of every other living creature on the face of the earth, why are we prone to asking these questions?
Mm-hmm.
The monkeys don't care. Like, the monkeys are not asking, where did I come from?
Well,
What am I here for?
these theories, as you talked about, they break down on a whole number of different levels.
Right.
And I think one of them where they really break down is on this level of consciousness. And I don't think evolution can provide even a coherent answer for how our minds have evolved to come to the point where we ask questions about reality. Because if we only evolve for survival and for the passing down of our genetics, there's no reason that our brain has to evolve to get us to ask questions about truth. We don't need to know questions about truth. All
Right.
we need to know is, will this help me survive? Is this going to kill me?
Yeah.
So you don't know. Like, you're in the atheist worldview, your entire brain may be telling you a gigantic lie. And the lie may be to serve the purpose of your survival.
Right.
So you can't trust anything as truth.
Yeah.
If you're an evolutionist, because everything your brain might be telling you might be a falsehood about reality.
Yeah.
About everything. But of course we know that's absurd.
Yeah.
And we know it's absurd.
But I mean, even just in this theory of everything came from this big bang that just came from nothing, even atheists are having to come to terms with some of the problems. Like, there's not enough time. We haven't even with hundreds of billions of years. What are they up to? 400 billion? Is that somewhere around there? I don't remember how old they say the universe is anymore, but they say it still is not enough time for the evolutionary process that Darwin was writing about to have occurred.
These are secular people too.
Yeah, these are not Christians. These are mathematicians and scientists that are saying, look, we're talking about minuscule genetic mutations that occur over millions and millions and millions and millions of years, and to get to where we are now, there simply is not enough time.
Yeah,
That's a big problem.
it
And
is.
also I mean, all these scientists are seeing that disorder doesn't move towards order. Simplicity doesn't move towards complexity.
Mhm.
It's the opposite. They see the opposite. Even in the genetic mutations that they regularly observe in nature, it doesn't move from worse to better. It moves from better to worse.
Mhm.
The genetic mutations that they typically are observing are actually mutations that harm or even are fatal to the next generation.
Right.
Like the mutations they don't improve the species. They
Yeah.
usually make them worse.
Not getting an advantage.
Yeah. You don't see, you can't have the disorder of the Big Bang suddenly turning into the order that we see in our galaxy. Everything seems to have a purpose. That's just not the way that it works.
Right.
So I think that we'll I mean, there's already a push to change the paradigm. Like, we've got to figure out a different way that this would have happened. So we're gonna see new theories start to pop up that will displace old Darwinian evolution. You're gonna have to throw out all those textbooks, but we don't have to worry about that because we have the Bible, and the Bible gives us answers that are unchanging. We don't have to interpret the Bible based on the latest scientific discovery. We can look at the scriptures and we can say, this is what God says in His Word about where we came from,
Right.
and we see it right here in chapter 1.
Yeah. But if you believe that, you can see how there would be an overwhelming hopelessness if people would actually think about it. But I think people don't think about it.
Yeah.
They fill their lives with distraction and entertainment,
Right.
because the truth of that is, I mean, hopelessness, meaninglessness.
Right.
Like, how can you have a society? How can you create laws and ethics? And
Yeah. We all know deep down, like humanity suppresses the truth, but deep down it knows there's more to life than just nothingness. Like, even the most hardcore atheistic Darwinian scientist isn't going to live out his worldview in a consistent fashion.
Right.
That they're still going to be searching for meaning.
And live as though their life
Matters. So it has importance.
Yeah.
I mean, if we came from nothing and our lives are meaningless and we're just star stuff, and when we die we'll go back to star stuff, why do I need to pay taxes?
Yeah.
Like, why do I need to endure suffering? Like, the consistent atheistic worldview would be nihilism, or anarchy. Like, just live however you want to live.
Yeah. Yeah. But the Bible tells us, God tells us, because He was there, He tells us where we came from. And that truth is profound and has,
Right.
can really, I think, give hope where the world can give you nothing and leave you stuck in this question of, God tells you where you came from. And the answer is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness."
So you zeroed in on here that we came from divine contemplation. And I like that.
Self-deliberation.
Yeah, deliberating.
Yeah, I mean, these pronouns, us, our, have caused people to ask questions. Obviously, it should, because for the first 25 verses, God it seems like he's alone. He's creating alone, and God said, and God saw. God divided. God called, and then all of a sudden we've got verse 26, and it says, "Then God said, 'Let us.'" And who's the us? Like who else is there? And so there's a lot of different ways in which theologians have tried to understand that.
Right.
Some better than others.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
So you've got the divine council view. That's God is speaking to other heavenly beings.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know when the angels were created, but I would say that by day 6 they're there.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that they were created on day 1, but they're at least there by day 6. I would say.
Yeah, I think Job kind of entails that they watched this
Right.
and were worshiping
Right.
as God was doing this.
Yeah. But the bigger problem is that nowhere in the scriptures does it suggest that man is made in the image of angels.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're made in the image of God. It seems like there is that is a distinction between the angels and man. That even the angels aren't made in the image of God. We are. And so angels are actually created to serve the saints, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So that suggestion that the us or the our is God talking to the divine council, I think it kind of falls apart.
Mm.
Even though we see in other places in the Old Testament God speaking to his divine council and asking questions, like Job 1, 1 Kings chapter 22. But here, I don't think that he's talking to his divine council and saying, let us make man in our image.
Mm-hmm.
Because verse 27, it says God created man in his image.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems to interpret what's going on. The second one is that God's using the divine plural.
The plural of majesty.
The majestic we.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've ever watched a movie or a TV show with like a king in the Middle Ages, they might speak in the plural.
Well, The Rock might have on WWE.
Oh yeah.
If you ever see The Rock talk,
Okay, talks in the majestic plural.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah. Third person.
Well, there is no rock like our rock. But there's no evidence that the Hebrews ever used the majestic plural.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere else in the Old Testament, unless you pick out the R and we and say, well, there it is.
There it is.
Like
look at that.
it's kind of a circular reasoning.
But it didn't really even. It wasn't really in use for like about 1,000 years.
Yeah,
after
the pharaohs weren't using it. It doesn't seem like the Babylonians were using it. The first evidence of the majestic plural is the Persians, the Persian kings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does Xerxes say it in 300?
I don't know.
Does he use the majestic plural? I don't know. But anyway, it's probably not what's going on. Moses probably is not using that because he's writing 1,000 years before the Persians show up.
What if the Persian kings were actually possessed? And that explains why they said
we are legion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anything's possible, Jay.
Definitely.
I saw one commentator. I can't remember who it is now. I usually write down in parentheses who's saying ridiculous things so I can reference it. It said that God is full of infinite potentiality, and so he's able to speak in the plural.
Whatever that
I don't
means.
know what that means.
That's word salad.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything.
As I'm reading some of these guys, because I'm not just reading, like we talked about it last week. We're young Earth creationists. We hold to a literal 24-hour, 6-day creation week. I'm not just reading commentators that are young Earth. I'm reading old Earth guys also, and I think sometimes these guys they just make it more complicated.
Yeah.
I text you last week, and I was like, this guy is looking at verses 29 and 30, where God says, I've given all the vegetation, all the fruit to the animals to eat for food.
Yeah.
And this commentator is like, now that doesn't mean that they didn't eat meat. That's like, where are you getting that? Like,
Right.
I'm coming to a commentator to know what the text says.
Yeah.
And when a commentator is looking at the same text as me, and he's like, but it doesn't really mean that. It doesn't. That's not what it really means.
Right.
Like,
Well, that's
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's
That's
because
what it looks like. It says.
they would interpret it as an impossibility because they're like, look at carnivores. They're carnivores,
Right.
and
They're under the presupposition of old earth, of death, of animal death before the fall. And
Right.
so based on those presuppositions, he would have to look at it and be like, well, even though the text says I've given every green plant for food, it doesn't say I've given only the green plants for food. But that seems to be what the text says. And it makes sense of Isaiah chapter 11, which is like new creation, and all the animals are eating vegetation again. Like they're not carnivores anymore. It's like
Right.
it's like creation's been reversed. But what do I know? I'm just a pastor in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But divine potentiality, I don't know what that means. I think that this is so easy from a hermeneutical standpoint. I think it's so easy for us to say this is a flash of the Trinity. Like we have Trinitarian language here. Who is God talking to? There's three persons in the one God, and they are in relationship with each other, and they can communicate with each other. I think that's what's going on. I mean, we've already seen that God is plural in verse 1. Elohim is a plural noun, but every verb that's attached to him is singular. So there is something going on here where God is plural, but he's also singular.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing that's going on here in verse 26. Then God, Elohim, plural, said, singular, let us make man in our image and after our likeness.
Yeah.
So you've got this tension between the singular and the plural, and it's not completely fleshed out here. But as we continue going through Genesis, we're going to see that there's a plurality of persons within the Godhead in Genesis, and I think Moses and the ancient Israelites understood this.
Right.
They didn't know as much as we do. There is progressive revelation, but they're not in complete darkness, saying, "Well, I just don't know. There's only one God."
Yeah.
And they didn't have any idea that there was persons, because even in verse 2, the Spirit of God is hovering over the face of the water. Like you've got the Spirit of God, and so that even there's a distinction in the persons. There's at least Elohim who's speaking, and the spirit of Elohim who's floating over the waters.
Right.
And so we're seeing it already. And so this is divine deliberation. This is what's so interesting about this passage, is that as we've been going through these first 25 verses, it's God saying to creation, he's saying to the stuff, do this. And the creation is responding, and it's obeying him. And it over and over and over again. God said, he's speaking outward. And then you get to verse 26 and he's speaking inward. He's speaking to himself. And the story, the narrative, it doesn't quite come to a halt, but it really slows down, which amplifies the importance of what's happening next.
Yeah.
That God is speaking not outward, but he's speaking inward. The triune God is deliberating amongst himself. What is he going to do now?
Yeah.
And he's going to make man. Where did you come from? You're not an accident. There's no sense. There's no indication that this is an accident. God is deliberating.
Yeah. So you can take your pick, right? If you're a Westerner, you were totally unpurposely caused an accident, or God himself deliberated and chose to create you.
This has like street level implications
Mm-hmm.
because if you've ever been told that you don't matter, that you're not important, you're a mistake. I mean, our culture says that about millions of babies through abortion. You're an accident. You're a mistake. You're not wanted. This verse, really just this first sentence of this verse, destroys that.
Right.
Like, you're not an accident. You're on purpose.
Yeah, think about being raised. Like, just compare it to like the first, like probably the first thing most of the people in our church teach their kids. They'll ask them a question: "Who made you?"
Right.
God made me.
Yep.
That's the answer,
Uh-huh.
and that's what you say to a little child. Like
Yeah.
they're just learning to talk. Who made you? God made me.
Mm.
What else did God make? God made everything.
Yep.
Right. Or, hey, highly sophisticated blob of goo.
Yeah.
Who made you? No one made me.
I'm star stuff, Daddy.
I'm an accident. Yeah, that might actually affect how a child develops.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, might have some consequences.
Right.
Yeah, this isn't abstract theology. Like, this has importance.
Yeah.
I don't even think that theistic evolution really deals with this accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no sense in this passage that there's any kind of long passage of time, or that man is the product of the evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is special creation of man in his finished state on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it matters.
Theistic evolution kind of reminds me of like the Anunnaki. Like that's growing in popularity in secular podcasts.
Okay.
The Anunnaki show up. There's an ape-like creature,
Uh-huh.
and they modify its genetics to be human,
Right.
so that we can dig gold for the Anunnaki.
Yeah.
Because they need gold for their planet.
Yeah. You do have to do some, you have to fill in the gaps of the scripture that you don't have to fill in the gaps. Like, the answer is here.
Right.
You don't have to try to bring in other stuff to make sense of this passage.
Yeah.
Just, what does the text say?
Yeah.
Just, I'm a simple guy. I look at the text and I ask, what does it say? What does it say? I think that's the best way to look at it,
Mm-hmm.
to interpret the text. We came from God, from self-deliberation, and he created us.
Yeah. Good. That brings us to the next question then. Who am I?
Yeah.
So we jump in and we look further in verse 27. And you said the first thing to remember is that you're a creature.
Yeah.
How is that? You brought that out of the text. How does that play out in a practical way in our life to know that?
Yeah. Well, we see it in verse 27. So God created man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there. And it's the word that's used in the Old Testament only of God. This is something only God can do. He makes something that didn't exist. And we see the connection to the rest of the animals. So man is made on the sixth day, along with the land animals, right? He is. We will find out in chapter 2 that the animals and man both come out of the ground. God makes them out of the ground. He blesses the animals and man so that they'll be fruitful and multiply. He gives them the same kind of food. We eat the same kind of food that the animals do. And so we're creatures. And that helps us to remember that we're not God. Like, we're not the ones, when we ask the question, who am I? The answer is not found in whatever you drum up. The answer is found in what God says, because you're not the creator, you're a creature. He's the creator. The creator is the one who gets to determine what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll find out in our third question, he's the one that determines what our purpose is.
Right.
Like our purpose is not just whatever we decide it is. And we can't live however we want to live. Like God has determined what we are. You see it in the way that he creates the animals. Like he tells them where they're to live. He puts them where they live. He tells them to be fruitful and multiply according to their kind. He gives them food. It's the same with us. Like God has created us. He's fashioned us to be who we are. He's given us our proper domain, our proper dominion. He's given us our purpose. He's provided for us, and to try to break free of that is to rebel against our Creator.
Right.
Like
So-
we're not the self-determiners. He is.
Yeah. So there's we can't escape. We can never be autonomous,
Right.
which is, I think, a natural outworking of the other counter worldview. They have this kind of illusion of autonomy that they
Right.
can do what they want with their life.
Even though in that worldview, you would just be the process of neurons firing and chemicals going off in your brain. Like you, in the naturalistic world, you are just an animal, and so you might have the illusion of free will, but you're not actually free. You are a slave to your desires.
Right.
Why does a dog do what a dog does? Like it's in his nature. Well, the same would be true of a human. Why does a human do what a human does? Well, it's just in his nature. So your neurons fired, and you're like Pavlov's dog, and you start drooling when you hear a bell.
Yeah. So we're a creature, and so we will always be, no matter what we think, accountable to God.
Yeah,
And
he's the creator. You're the creature. You answer to him.
Yeah. So we continue on, and we look that we are created in God's image and His likeness,
Yeah.
which
So we're not just creatures. We are creatures, but we're not just another animal.
right.
So I like what one commentator said. I think it was Derek Kidner. He said that we're in nature, but we're also over nature. And that's what we see in verse 26 and 27 is that we're made in God's image. And so there's something different about us. Like we intrinsically know this. That's why we own pets. Other animals don't go to the pound and adopt an animal. Like why do we own animals?
Right.
We intrinsically know that we're not just separated by genetic mutations. It's not just time and chance that means that I get to eat with a fork and knife at a dining room table and the dog eats out of the dog bowl.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So while we're creatures, there's something different about us. There's something else about us
Yeah.
that separates us.
And it's only said of humans. It's never said of angels.
Yeah. No.
We're created in His image and likeness.
We're not even told about the creation of angels. Like, what kind of implications can we draw from that? Like, we're not even told about them. They're just there.
Right.
Like we learn more about the animals than we learn about angels. It's interesting.
It is. Yeah, it really is. So what can we draw out of this being made in the image and likeness of God? How are we to interpret that, and what does that mean?
Yeah, there's been a lot of ink spilled over
Oh, yeah.
this. You know, what does it mean to be made in the image and likeness of God? I think those are synonymous. I think they're what is the term? I can't remember the literary term that they just fill out it's a phrase and it just fills out the whole meaning. Well, I think the best place for us to look is in chapter 5. I think that helps us to understand what's going on in chapter 1. So we go over to chapter 5, and it tells us that when God created man, He made him in the likeness of God. So we've got the interchange of image and likeness. Male and female, He created them, and He blessed them and named them man when they were created. that has some implications for like the age of the earth also, I think.
Mhm.
Like on the day that they were created, they were called man. So there's not like early man and then
Right.
Adam and Eve. But verse 3 is what helps us to understand this. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth.
Mm-hmm.
So Adam is made in the image and likeness of God, and him and Eve have a child, and this child is in his image and in his likeness. We understand this. Like, we understand this. So I think what image and likeness mean is we really can look at it in two parts, in our being and our doing. So ontologically, we are the image of God, just like Seth is in the image of Adam. So Seth he's a human, right? And he looks like his father. Your kids look like you and Angie, right? My kids look like me and Julia. And no matter what they do, no matter where they go, there's nothing in the entire world that can change the fact that ontologically, in their being, they're my kids, right? They're made in my image. So that's similar to what it means to be made in the image of God. Like, just from the fact that you're a human, you are the image of God. And that means that we are spiritual beings. That's something different from the animals. We have the capacity to reason, to love, to have relationship, not just with each other, but we actually can have relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Like a child and their father. That's a relationship that's unlike anything. If you have a good relationship with your father, it's unlike any other relationship you'll have with anyone else in the world. If you have a bad relationship with your father, you carry that with you, and it's different than any other relationship. Like, no one else in the world can hurt you like your parents, right? And so we're able to have relationship with our kids. We're able to have relationship with God, because we are the image of God. But we're also supposed to do, and in our doing, we also are supposed to be in the image of God. So my kids take after me and Julia, right? I gave the example of Abigail. She has similar sense of humor to me. My apologies already to the world. I don't know what kind of monster she's going to turn into.
Mm-hmm.
But all of my kids have different attributes of me, right? And so, like my kids do things that are similar to me, and the older I get, I realize I do similar things to my parents. We're supposed to do like God. And so Adam is supposed to have dominion over the earth. We see that in verse 26. We see it in verse 28. We're supposed to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion. Adam's supposed to be a king, right? And he's supposed to rule in a righteous way. He's supposed to reflect who God is. So that the way I always like to describe it is we're supposed to be like mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, God's glory shines on us, and we're supposed to shine out to creation, this reflection of who God is. And in doing that, we are like the image of God. All of this is tied up in the ancient Near Eastern context of when a king would conquer a land, he'd set up an image of himself, a statue, and then he'd go home.
Right.
And the statue, the image, was a visual reminder to the people of who's the king, who's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God has done that too. It's us.
Mm-hmm.
We're the living images of God. And so everywhere we go, we're supposed to be reflecting and reminding creation of who the actual king is.
Mm-hmm.
It's God. Right? Something I want to bounce off of you is like, when we talk about the image of God, we're not talking about his physical form, because God's a spirit. But I think that there's something to the fact that our bodies are not accidental.
Mm-hmm.
Like we look the way that we do for a reason. Like God self-deliberated, and He could have made us look like minotaurs, right? But He didn't. He made us look like this. What do you think? I think that there's something there, even though that's God is a spirit. He doesn't have a body like ours. But this is the form that the Son would be incarnated
Mm-hmm.
into. Like this is I mean, and then this was a purposeful decision for Him to be made to look like us. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and it's just speculation, but I think
Right.
the way that we're made is optimal in the universe
Hmm.
to live in a material universe. So, I mean, even secular people will speculate on this. There are other types of evolution where, maybe non-carbon based life, maybe like silicon based life. And I don't think that is what happens or what is, but I think that we're the apex of anything that can be in the material world.
Mm.
And so designed purposefully to maximally reflect God's glory.
Mm.
And then you can speculate from there. I mean, people going through the problem of evil and reading all these books and trying to understand how did Satan fall, because God doesn't tempt him to fall. It's possible, at least, to think maybe he had glory envy.
Yeah.
So he's majestic,
Mm-hmm.
I think, glorious in his own way, and powerful.
Yeah.
Even over all the angels. But then God makes a man,
Mm-hmm.
and the man is a reflection of the glory he sees in God. He's now seeing it in the material world.
Yeah.
Like we think, like, what if like you saw an angel, right? And you're like, oh, it's a blinding supernatural experience.
Right.
What if the angels had a supernatural experience when they saw Adam and Eve before the fall? Like, what if they were that glorious?
Yeah.
And they were like, and then he was like,
I don't like that.
I want to destroy that.
That's right. Yeah. I want to smash that mirror.
Yeah.
And that's essentially that's kind of what happens in the fall. The image of God is marred. It's like a cracked mirror that distorts the image of God, but it's not completely destroyed, because after the flood in Genesis chapter 9, the reason why God institutes a death penalty for anyone that kills a man is because man's made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. So even after everything that happens between Genesis 2 and 9, man is still made in the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's his being, right? His ontologically, as long as he's a human, he's made in the image of God. And I don't think we want to be Gnostic about it either, as if, well, it's our spirit that's made in the image of God and not something about our bodies. Like, as a human, we're not just spirits, we're bodies also.
Right.
And so there is something about our bodies that's part of the image of God.
Yeah.
Like, to be a human is to be a body spirit unit.
Yeah.
And that's why the resurrection is so central, is because you're not meant to be a spirit forever.
Yeah.
You're meant to be a body and a spirit
Right.
united forever. And so it's not just the righteous that are going to be resurrected, it's the unrighteous also that will be resurrected.
Well, I told you once, and I can't remember who this commentator was, but he had made this comment about the animals in the animal kingdom, and he was like, it's undeniable when you look that even though the image is broken, it's still there because of how animals obey us and
react to us.
And sometimes, even you'll see crazy things like lions who haven't seen, someone who rescued them when they were, a baby.
Right.
Maybe they don't see them for 7 years, and then they see them in 7 years, and here comes a wild lion running out. You think this guy's about to get mauled.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It acts like a kitty.
Yeah.
Like, comes up to him, like rubbing his face on him, and this is a wild lion.
Right.
Why do elephants obey humans? Like, this is insane.
Right.
They could smash us. And he said, to animals, we are God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're the image and likeness of God, and we're made to be God's representative to the animals. So when animals interact with us, like on the ordering of creation, like we are like God to the animals.
Yeah.
And I think you can see it
Yeah.
still.
Yeah. And we're supposed to represent the goodness of God.
Mm-hmm.
This is why our sin is so heinous, is because we're supposed to be reflecting who God is. And whenever we sin, we're reflecting this is who God is.
Yeah.
And it's a lie. We're lying about who God is.
Yeah, I think it plays into, you say, like, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
I think Christians should be good environmentalists.
I think so.
I think there's a difference in environmentalism and like climate cultism,
Right.
which
Well,
are two different things.
You see how it's distorted in that now mankind actually puts nature over man.
Mm-hmm.
They either worship it or they'll sacrifice people for the sake of the climate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you look at all the things that the climate activists want to do, and it's going to harm people.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to oppress people for the sake of nature.
Right.
And we've flipped everything. And instead of us being made in the image of God, well, God is in the wind.
Right.
God is in the trees and the mountains. And
Mother,
so we have to
Mother Earth.
we have to protect. Yeah, we have to
God
protect.
is the earth.
We have to protect Mother Earth. That's flipping what we're supposed to do. But that also means we don't abuse our animals.
Mm-hmm.
Pick up your trash. Right. We shouldn't go out of our way to trash the earth.
Right.
Right. We shouldn't abuse the earth. All of that plays into us being made in the image of God. The earth is for us. Like you read the way that the entire 6 days moves, and the climax, the apex of it is us.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that's been made, the heavens and the earth, and the way that the waters were divided, so that now that there's breathable air, there's dry ground for us, there's food, there's the sun and the moon and the stars to govern the years and the seasons and the days. For who's looking up at the sun and the moon and the stars to see what time of year it is? It's not the monkeys, right? It's us, right? It's the animals. What are the animals here for? They're for us, so we shouldn't abuse them, right? That doesn't mean that we worship them or put them up on a pedestal, because we're the ones that God's put up on the pedestal for the rest of the world to see. But as good image bearers, as reflecting the righteousness and justice and beauty of God, we ought to treat the earth that way.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to be good kings.
Right. Yeah.
But this idea that we're made in the image of God, it has all kinds of implications. This is why idolatry is so, it's not just wicked, but it's stupid. When someone sets up an image, they're essentially abdicating their own position.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are made in the image of God. He's the real king. He's the true king. You're his image. And now you're going to worship an animal.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to worship money. You're going to worship stuff. Like, you are degrading both God and yourself,
mm-hmm.
because you are God's statue. Why are you bowing down to something else?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This has implications for how we treat the other gender.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it tells us in poetic form, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
Mm-hmm.
So both male and female are the image of God.
Right.
It's not male superiority and female inferiority. Like, ontologically, they are created both as the image of God. Now, in chapter 2, we'll start looking at the roles. There is a distinction between male and female. They're not, in their doing, they're not exactly the same. But ontologically, they're equal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We talked about stewardship over the world. We should have a high view of the sanctity of human life. This speaks to abortion.
Right.
It really just speaks to how we treat each other on a day-to-day basis. Like, this is why we don't lie to each other. We don't steal from each other. We don't cheat each other. We don't treat one another like you don't scream at someone. Like, when you scream at someone, you're screaming at someone made in the image of God.
Right.
And you are in the image of God, and you're reflecting who God is.
Right.
This is why the death penalty was instituted. It's because the image of God is so highly valued that to take another human life is to do violence against the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
This is why pornography is so bad, because everyone involved is made in the image of God. This is why racism is wicked, because there's no superior ethnicity. We're all made in the image of God.
Which there is in the Darwinian view.
There is, yeah. I mean, the full title of Origin of Species is talking about the superiority of the favored races.
Mm-hmm.
Well, according to Darwin, who was the favored race?
Right.
It's white people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who are the inferior people?
Yeah, and he influenced people like Hitler.
He did. Well, he influenced slavery in America.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they feel justified in enslaving Africans? Because white people are superior.
Right.
Like widespread repercussions. Right.
Yeah.
You want to deal with racism, but you don't want to deal with the worldview that supports it.
Right.
You know, why shouldn't we view different races differently?
Right. It's strange.
If evolution is true.
Isn't it weird to watch like Western academia like condemn racism and even try to condemn like Christians?
Yeah.
Because their worldview didn't end racism.
Right.
Or you can't end racism because people are sinners, but slavery. Like the Christian worldview ended slavery. It didn't emerge out of Islam. It didn't emerge out of Hinduism or Buddhism.
Right.
Like ending slavery emerged out of the Christian worldview, where we're all made in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah.
And yet it's treated today in the academia like it didn't happen. Yeah. Like we just evolved. We evolved to like this higher.
Well, you never hear anybody use the full title of Origin of Species.
Yeah.
It's always just Origin of Species. They never use the subtitle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. This is why the whole transgender movement is so wicked. One, it's denying the goodness of what God's created. Two, it's getting rid of the two genders, and then three, you've got people that are mutilating themselves and deceiving even children into having irreversible operations.
Yeah.
To change their to change the outward appearance of their gender, and they're image bearers.
There have been competing worldviews against this all through history. And I think if you like boil it down to like, if you're looking from the outside looking in, you want to know like, okay, which one is the morally superior worldview? Well, in this one, we uphold human dignity. And there seems to be, everywhere Christian goes, the ending of human sacrifice, which there's human sacrifice all over this planet.
Right.
The ending of like mutilation of the image of God,
right,
and everywhere else,
enslavement.
However else the counter worldview, which I believe is satanic, in the satanic competing worldview, however that emerges, in whatever religion that emerges in, whatever philosophy that emerges through, there's always going to be the mutilation of the image, and there's always going to be human sacrifice.
Yeah,
and that should, I mean, somebody could do a PhD study on this. It's not going to be me, but somebody could, and you'll find those tracking all the way through history, emerging now in more sophisticated ways.
Well, look at the type of government that the atheistic worldview creates. It doesn't create America,
right?
It creates communist Soviet Union,
right?
Communist China. It's North Korea,
right?
Like it is, it's the Muslim nations. Like Iran, like that's what the counter worldviews produce. Because in the atheistic communistic regime of China, Like you're just a cog.
This is why Richard Dawkins, the atheist, says that he's a cultural Christian.
Yeah.
He actually says that.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't believe in any of the theology of the Bible,
Right.
but
It's not like he's going to church.
He is at least smart enough to recognize the type of world he wants to live in can only be produced by Christians.
Right.
That really says something.
Yeah. Because we understand that mankind, both men and women, are created in the image of God, and so you don't abuse, you don't try to suppress other people and oppress them and enslave them, and you don't use them for your own gratification.
Yeah,
like if they're made in the image of God, then they're worthy of dignity, and this is a dignity that's beyond the Mr. Rogers. Everyone's special,
right?
It's deeper than that. You're made in the image of God, and so God is assigning your value. You're not assigning your own value, and it's not someone around you that's assigning your value. So many people they base their value and their worth and their uniqueness based on what parents have said to them, or what a boss has said, or a coach, or whatever, a spouse. Your value, your worth is not based on what anyone else says. It's based on what God says about you. And that's the objective truth, is that you're created in the image of God.
Right.
A little side note that I didn't have time to put into the sermon was from Stephen Wellum, my systematic professor, and he said it's crucial to note that all of these important theological implications are predicated on the historicity of the creation account.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Like, if we're reading Genesis 1 and it's myth or it's a fable, there's nothing that's actually grounding everything that we're saying in any kind of reality.
Yeah.
Like if Adam and Eve are not real figures, if they're mytho-history, then what we're saying about the implications of them being made in the image of God is undermined.
Right.
The only way that this can be true on a solid foundation is if what God's word says, you take it at face value. And you say, this is what actually happened.
Right. And even like if you're a skeptic still, I mean, go look at mitochondrial studies. Like they are strongly pointing toward what we just said, that we're all related, relatively closely related to, and given the time frame, this common ancestor that we have, it just so happens to, by sheer chance, I guess, George, seem to line up with the biblical timeline.
Right.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, that brings us to a third point. What on earth are we here for? There's your third point. We're looking at some big questions, George, important ones. Where did I come from? Who am I? Now, what on earth am I here for?
Yeah. It's just to have fun, Jay. Just to make the most of it.
Yeah.
I don't
just
think
to pass the time.
Maybe an unpopular opinion. I don't know. I don't think Christians should have bucket list.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have a list to be like, these are all the things I need to do to like squeeze everything out of this life.
Well, people always like, I've been asked several times, like, oh, you're a pastor. Like, oh, you ever want to go see Jerusalem? Like, you got to go there before you die. And I'm like,
right.
Why?
Yeah.
I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Can I see it? Can I see it after I'm resurrected?
Yeah. First time I see it, it's going to be
better.
Well, the first time that we see it, I think it's going to be quite the show when Christ returns in wrath, and maybe we'll help rebuild it afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. What are we here for? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were looking at the big picture of the entire Bible, the purpose for everything. What are we here for? It's not just to leave the world a better place. It's not just to leave a legacy for your children. It's bigger, and we see it in verses 28 and through 31. God bless them, God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the sixth day. Now, if we read that just in a simplistic way, we would probably be tempted to say, well, the purpose is to just have babies. But we have to tie it into the big story, right? We have to remember Adam is made in the image of God. What does that mean? Well, ontologically, he's in the image of God, but also he's supposed to do something. And we already talked about this. He's supposed to be a king. Like, that's what dominion and subdue, that's what it means. He's supposed to be a king. And so what he's supposed to do is he's supposed to have children. Him and Eve are supposed to have children. They're supposed to make more image bearers. Then those image bearers are supposed to have more image bearers. And what they're supposed to do is they're eventually supposed to reflect the glory of God around the entire world. Mm-hmm. Right. That's what they were supposed to do. That they were supposed to rule over the world as God brought rule and order to the cosmos.
Right.
God fills the universe with stuff. They're supposed to fill the earth with image bearers. Right. They're supposed to be doing the same stuff that God was doing.
Yeah.
So that God's glory would be reflected in all the earth through his image bearers. Right. And he gave them everything they needed to do it. He gave them food. He gave them the animals to help them. Mm-hmm. He blessed them so that they would be able to accomplish it, that they would flourish on the earth. And he put them in a very good world. Like, this is not a world that's filled with death and chaos and danger. Yeah. Like, he gave them a very good world in which they could do this. That this is a big mission.
Yeah.
Right? I just said kind of offhandedly, this is a mission that should make even Elon Musk jealous.
Right.
He wants to go and terraform Mars and create a colony. The work on Earth hasn't even been accomplished.
Right.
Like, the glory of God has not filled the earth yet.
Yeah. So pre-fall, I think maybe people can start with a wrong understanding, looking at planet Earth as like this paradise planet. But I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think the way to look at it is there's a paradise garden. There's a paradise place.
Yeah.
Where the glory of God, where God himself dwells, and the image and the glory of God is there in a man. But as he works the earth and takes dominion, it's like it's supposed to expand.
Right.
And then the end goal is paradise planet. Mm-hmm. And I think you get like hints of this when you cut your grass.
Right.
Well, if you cut your grass as a Christian, right? I don't, like, my grass will need to be cut this week, and if it stops raining, maybe I can. But when I get done, I'm going to have this immense feeling of gratification, right? It's going to be like, oh, I worked hard, and now look at what I made. Look at what I did to the glory of God. And I think that's what they were supposed to do. Like, the earth is there. It's not completed totally yet to its paradise level.
It's not cultivated.
It's not cultivated.
Right? It's like a jungle.
And as we spread out, we are, as Take Dominion, we're creating this paradise place in the universe.
Right.
And then who knows where it goes from there. Maybe we did work to go to Mars afterward.
Maybe.
And terraform it and make it another paradise planet.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it will be like in the new heaven and the new earth.
Maybe.
Who knows? Like, maybe we can just work and create art and beauty and make everything a paradise garden and just keep expanding.
Yeah.
I guess if you're lazy, maybe you don't think that's... But there is something to work. I think everyone, even people that don't like working, maybe they are lazy, knows what it feels like to stop being lazy.
And you'll feel some of this emptiness. I was laid off from a job about a year after Roland was born. I was laid off from my job, and all of a sudden you don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Right.
That's terrible. Like, get up and fill out some applications and sit around. You're created to do something. You're
Mhm.
created to work. You're not created to just sit and watch TV.
Yeah.
And so if you are allergic to work, you're probably not feeling very satisfied either.
Yeah, and your mental health is probably awful.
Yeah.
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 A good way
Yeah.
to immediately kill depression is
Start
to
working.
find something to do
Yeah.
and to do it,
Uh,
and then you don't have time.
right.
Like it just disappears.
Right. Yeah. But we know that the job wasn't completed. Adam and Eve, they didn't fill the earth with image bearers that were reflecting the glory of God. Instead, we get to Genesis chapter 6, and it says the whole earth was filled with violence. That's the opposite of what was supposed to happen.
Right.
They weren't supposed to turn the world into the wild, wild west.
Mm.
They were supposed to reflect the goodness of God.
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's the first thing we see out of the garden is a destruction of the image of God.
Yeah.
A murder.
Yeah.
A murder.
Uh-huh.
And so we haven't even come close to doing what we were created to do.
And it's because of sin.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all part of it. We've all done it. We're all broken mirrors that are displaying distorted images of God to creation. We do it all the time, and we're left dissatisfied, unfulfilled, empty. We feel the frustration and the vanity. I mean, you're gonna cut your yard, and you're gonna come in the next day and say, "My head is just killing me."
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a prophet, but I'm predicting
Yeah.
how you're gonna feel after you mow that yard.
Yeah.
And then what's gonna happen?
I have to do it
You're
again.
gonna have to do it again, and have to do it again, and weeds are gonna grow up. And if you came to my house, you would see the futility of my front yard. It's like half of it's dirt. Right. And it's because of sin. It's because we live in a fallen world, and so we're not able to image God the way that we're supposed to.
Mhm.
But there's hope,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's even though the first Adam failed to accurately image God, there's a last Adam. There's a second Adam who is superior to the first Adam. And you have to, like, this is where you like take the Old and New Testament and you put them together, and you can see what's going on, how the story is it's spanning across the entire canon of Scripture. Is that Adam was made in the image of God from the dirt, and he was supposed to reflect God's glory, his kingdom. He's supposed to be this king, and he fails. He falls into sin and misery.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a true image bearer who is superior to Adam because he's not an image. He's not the image of God based on being created in the image of God. He's superior because he is the eternal Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so Colossians tells us he is the image of the invisible God.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus can say, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He is, Hebrews says that he is the radiance of the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature.
Yeah.
So there is the first Adam who fails miserably, but there is a superior image, and this was the purpose. This was the goal. The goal was Adam was never going to fulfill it. It wasn't. This was the plan. The divine plan of God was to be glorified in the image bearer, in the Son of God. And so in his incarnation, Jesus comes in the flesh as the image of God.
Right.
And in his 33 years of living, he perfectly mirrors and reflects the glory of God to creation.
Mm.
He is everything that Adam wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
in an even greater way, because he is the Son of God,
Mm-hmm.
uncreated.
And you brought this point out. he's the only person who could really ever say that he is truly human.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one who has ever perfectly been and done
Mm-hmm.
what we were created to do and be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's easy for us to um, compare ourselves with others. We're like, that's a weird person over there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're strange. There's something off about them. But what we need to realize is that there's something off about all of us. Like, we all are weird. Well, there's not a normal human being in the bunch. Jesus is the only one who has ever actually been a human. We all, sin has made something wrong with all of us. And so, I mean, creation looks at us, and the lunatics are running the asylum, right? There's something has gone massively wrong. Jesus is the only one who can show us what it's like to actually be a human. So when we read the gospel accounts of what Christ did, how he's interacting with people, how he's living his life to the glory of God, we're actually seeing this is the only true human who's ever lived.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty amazing.
Right.
Like, we have all these ideas of what it means to be, quote unquote, normal.
Yeah.
It's Jesus. Jesus is normal.
And we are really familiar with the aspect of the gospel, and Romans is so much zeroed in on this, that Christ, as the perfect human, he's able to die in our place and to take our sins upon himself. But the gospel is even bigger than that, because we're talking about things that have implications for all of creation,
right?
All of the universe. And what God is doing in setting in motion when Christ comes, a restoration of all things.
Yeah, you have to read this covenantally. I can't see how you can make sense of the story outside of a covenantal framework. Like, Adam is in covenant with God, and we'll see that when we get to chapter 2. I guess in January. He's in covenant with God. He's king of the world, and he is. I think he would have been king over all the other image bearers. I think that he would have been as the first man. I think that he would have been like the king. And in covenant with God, where God tells him, on the day you eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall surely die. When he breaks that covenant as a representative of all of humanity, and all of creation falls. Like, this is where fairy tales get their stories. Like, the king falls in. Oh, this is Beauty and the Beast. You know the story of Beauty and the Beast, don't you, Jay? Like, what happens to the beast? He is cursed, and his entire household, his entire castle, falls into ruins. Like, the entire land is under a curse. That's Adam. That's just the story of Adam and the world. When he falls, all of his domain falls into ruin also. But when Christ comes as the last Adam, he now can reverse everything and bring all of God's purposes in creation to its eschatological conclusion. Like, if Adam hadn't sinned, there would have been some point where the eschaton would have come, where he would have been glorified. All creation would have been glorified. But he falls. But Jesus, he comes and he fulfills the purpose of Adam as the true image bearer, and he dies, not for his own sins, but as the representative for his people. And then when he comes out of the garden, out of the tomb in the garden, in his glorified body, as the last Adam who has conquered death, he is the firstborn of new creation.
Yeah.
He's the first of new creation. And then through faith in him, as men and women and boys and girls are turning away from their sins and they're trusting in the last Adam, they now become part of new creation. The new creation is starting to bloom in them. And then at the last day, when Christ comes, he's going to resurrect his people in glorified bodies, and he's going to bring in new creation. There's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. So because of his representation, creation fell through Adam, But through his new and better representation, the last Adam is going to restore creation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got the bookends with Adam fails, Christ is victorious,
Right.
and all of creation hangs in the balance.
Yeah.
If Jesus had failed, the entire cosmos would have dissolved.
Right.
Because it all hangs in the balance.
Yeah.
Like when Christ is being tempted in the garden, it's more than just your personal salvation that's hanging
Yeah.
in the balance.
Yeah.
Like this is the battle. This is the battle for the universe. This is bigger than any Marvel movie.
Right.
Right. The entire universe is hanging in the balance of what Jesus does here. And he is the image bearer. And so he's victorious.
Right.
And he's conforming us into the image of God. That's what the promise is. That's what our sanctification is. That's Romans chapter 8, that those that God foreknew, he predestined to be conformed into the image of his Son, so that Christ might be the firstborn among many brothers. And we get this in Colossians. We get it in Corinthians. We get it in 1 John. Like we're being transformed into the image of Jesus. That's why Paul can say, we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Well, what's the purpose of God? That we, broken image bearers, might be restored to true image bearers. We might in the resurrection accurately represent God to new creation. And if that's the purpose, then we should recognize everything that happens in our life to be God working out that purpose in us.
Yeah.
Like if that's the goal, if our goal is to reach the image, the true image of God, then we should understand that everything that happens in our life, good or bad, is serving that purpose. And so we don't need to grumble. We don't need to get depressed. We don't need to get angry. We need to recognize that God is using this. He's using this for our good, so that we'll be made into the image of Christ.
Yeah. Great. All right. Where are you going next week?
We'll finish with the seventh day.
Okay.
Bad chapter break. Chapter 2, the first 3 verses, it finishes out the creation week.
Yeah.
I don't know why there's a chapter break right there. I think that verses 1 through 3 should be connected. It should be verses 32, 33, and 34. But
all right.
I didn't make the chapter and verse divisions, so that's where we'll be. We'll do the seventh day, and then that will be the break.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a bunch. All right, thanks for tuning in today. Hope this has been a blessing to you, and hopefully maybe now you understand the name of our podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
A little better. Right? Conform to Christ. So if this has been helpful and beneficial to you, please share it with somebody. Like, subscribe, share. That's what we say. And hopefully you'll come back next time as we continue this great conversation in the book of Genesis. All right. Till then, have a great week.